You like comics? You bet we do. How about artwork? Yeah, we fucking love that too. You like movies? Whether they are old or new. How about streaming? We watch that fucking shit, it's true. But it's comic book art that gets us all fired up for the all-time great. So let's buckle up. Hear me out, I'ma tell you how it all goes down on the Blacklist Underground.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blacklist Underground, brought to you by Ideal Organic CBD, starring our favorite artist, Zach Howard. Hi, Zach.
Hello. Take
Zach
that. That was the Zoom cam.
Well, what's that? What
I said that was the wobble cam for everybody.
All right. Zach is the creator of the hit series Wild Blue Yonder, as well as illustrator of The Cape, Hellboy, Judge Dredd, TMNT, and too many others to mention. I am your host, enthusiastic comic book aficionado, JC Washburn, and each episode we choose a comics legend to ink a drawing of. And this week's giant who's getting blacklisted is none other than Batman Year One illustrator David Mazzucchelli.
Oh, absolute slayer.
Zach, normally you would hit us up with our Patreon blacklisters, but my understanding is we've got a special guest.
Yes, our beloved Clara Meath is going to read it off for us.
I'm here. You can barely see me. All right, this week, our Patreon blacklisters are Patrick McNerney, Steve McKay, Kurt Kroll, Olga Masia, Philip Jean-Pierre, Andrew Jackson Brown, Anthony DiGelinardo. Did I say it? Did I got it?
You got it.
Bill DeGeest, Scott Buon, Max Machado, Robert Berman, Danny Earls, Clara Meath, myself, Damon Smith, and Andre Levshin. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, that was the lovely Miss Meath in her magician's assistant outfit. You didn't see her on camera, but
It's all stripey.
yeah, it was really revealing for all the sweaty boys out there. So the Mazzuccheli we're doing, sir.
Yeah, what did I say? Am I pronouncing that? Mazzucchelli.
Yes, that's what I've always been told. But again, I'm Zach Howard, so it's I'd say 50% chance.
Well, I did my due diligence this morning and reread probably for the 150th time Batman Year One.
Good man.
It continues to be, I think, in Frank, it's probably up there with Dark Knight and maybe his Daredevil run, probably as his great work. But
yeah,
Mazzucchelli, I think, as great as he is, he's always going to be remembered as a Frank Miller collaborator.
You really think so? I mean, it makes sense, but how do you feel, or why do you feel that?
Well, what's your favorite Mazzucchelli book that wasn't written by Frank Miller?
Well, you're right. I remember really enjoying Rubber Blankets. It was epic. But to your point, and just to back up, Batman Year One, I think it's superior to Dark Knight. As far as storytelling goes, execution, et cetera, where Dark Knight seems like this twisted fantasy for me, which is brilliant. I like there's a tangible human quality. I feel less like a voyeur, just some obscure voyeur out there. Like when I'm watching Dark Knight, I feel a little disconnected. I love it, but it seems fantastical. If that means anything for you, where this kind of feels like it's one of the first times it felt like, hey, Batman's actually could exist in this little nook in the city, and here's all the other people problems everybody's having. And it wasn't just like Ben Grimm's wedding type of real life event.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gordon kind of, cheating on his wife and not meaning, just all these happenstances of people and their problems. It just felt really good, or not good. It just felt more substantial, at least on a character level, shall we say, than Dark Knight. Yeah, Dark Knight, I felt like I was more watching. Opera. Oh, sorry.
Well, Dark Knight's kind of this big, broad, operatic thunder and lightning and emotion and pathos.
Yeah.
And it's also very punk rock. I mean, you read it and you've got, women with swastikas on their breasts and
Very much so.
It's just, there's little floating, dolls that defy explanation that are saying "fuck you" to little kids, and
yeah, it's very Dead Kennedys almost, and how it feels. The world it builds.
Yeah,
I would say
it's a very kind of like a dystopian RoboCop future, whereas Batman Year One is almost, the storytelling almost feels as deliberate as like a Godfather.
That's a good way to say it. To me, I would say it's more tangible on a human level. It feels like I could live in this world as the person I am.
He's getting bashed on the back of the head with television sets, and he's getting stabbed in the leg by child prostitutes. I mean, it's straight out of Taxi Driver. It's almost like a.
That's the perfect comparison. Is Taxi Driver versus Godfather. As far as Taxi Driver's Dark Knight, Godfather is Batman Year One.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Dark Knight was so electric. I'd almost even compare it to like a Clockwork Orange, or like. Oh,
that's actually it's got that kind of flavor too, right?
Yeah, or like even Natural Born Killers, or something.
One of my favorites.
Just something almost like Dark Knight was like. I remember when I picked up Dark Knight off the shelf. Of course, I'm a kid. I'm in junior high or whatever, 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade. I don't know when it came out. 84.
It's about when 87, 86, Dark Knight.
And it didn't compute. It was like the first time I heard rap music. It was just like, whoa, this is painted artwork. It's very European. It looks a little bit like the heavy metal stuff that I'm used to. So I kind of get that. But it's Batman, and he's old, and the Joker is old, and they're stabbing each other, and they're swearing.
Yeah, it blew my mind. It really did blow my mind too. I probably read it 20 times when the trade came out, because I only had 2 of the actual issues.
Same.
And Lord knows where they are. Somebody cashed in on them that swiped them from me. But something about Mazzuccheli blending with Frank Miller's, as you say, at the time he was really writing punk rock stories, but really complete and profound, almost cinematic, like Ronin or Dark Knight Returns, Pick Your Poison. Where Mazzuccheli, what I thought he brought to Frank Miller's the kind of lexicon of storytelling, and I like the blend of their style because there's a real humanism to Mazzuccheli, elegant humanism to him, his work. And what that did when they worked together is it really brought out the empathy factors for me and how I viewed the characters. And I had more of an empathetic personal take in the welfare of the people in the story, as opposed to Dark Knight. I just want to see what the hell happens. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But I don't feel connected to Bruce Wayne in it. Where in this, you really do, in his struggles of trying to become who he doesn't even know who he wants to be at the time. It's just really neat. Just kind of a coming of age Batman story. Who would have thought it could have been so potent when we already had those tropes?
And in a way, it's almost more of a Commissioner Gordon story than a Batman story. He's
definitely the vehicle, for bringing you through this world. And I think that's one of the it's the brilliance of it, because Commissioner Gordon's character just got so thick and profound, and you had such empathy and concern for him that I just never felt. Now, to your point, we were pretty young when this was coming out. But I never felt that way about any real Batman character or anything like that prior to Dark Knight or Batman Year One, rather.
Yeah, I mean, it was as if Coppola was directing a Batman story.
Yeah, it was just these profound characters with just bizarre, difficult lives that they're trying to navigate, right?
Well, and they cast Gregory Peck as Bruce Wayne.
Interesting.
Not even, no joke. I mean, if you look, today I was going through the whatever the Ultimate Edition of Year One,
Yeah.
And it has it has his model sheets. You know, it has Mazzucchelli's model sheets, and he bases Batman on Gregory Peck.
Wow, interesting. Who would have thought? Or I certainly wouldn't have. Interesting.
And I remember reading in interviews, you know, and you can kind of see it, you know, towards the end of his Daredevil run with Miller. You know, he was doing a lot of hatching during his Daredevil work, and there was some
classical nib hatching too. It was these long stroke nibs, like old school comics, you know, where that's how you simulated your grays were these pulled nib lines.
Yeah. I mean, and you could almost see his evolution, you know, because he started out and he's sort of in the Williamson school, you know, where he's sort of got the classical brush line, and then he gets into the Daredevil, the Daredevil Born Again run, and you're kind of starting to see what looks like to me almost like a Sienkiewicz influence, like he's starting to do. Well,
Sienkiewicz does that really fast building up of a nib line lots of times, you know. And, so I can see that a lot. To me, he was more classical, like he kind of had. Now this is incorrect, but he always fell in line. I don't know what his influences are, but he always made me feel the same way as far as his art was concerned. The same way that like. Ditko and Bob Layton and those types of guys did. He felt like an evolution of that, like a more stylized version of those, rather than, I'd say, a more dynamic version of those. And then he eventually lost a lot of the hatching and just reduced it to like these chunky brush strokes.
Yeah.
Which by the time then you get to Rubber Blankets, it's just a stylized version of kind of chunky brush shapes. You know, is how I describe it. Like wallpaper was just one line in the background repeated again and again, but with this loose brush stuff. And he was cartooning a little bit more. Yeah. And it felt kind of the same, but kind of different, more artsy, like kind of art house. And I like basically every phase of Mazzucchelli's career, even his super reduced stuff he does now. That's almost like it's almost animated.
Yeah.
You know, and he has almost no hatch work in it now.
Yeah, he's practically a cubist. If you look at some of these stories that he's
interesting.
I mean, it's really very primitive. I mean, it's almost Guy Davis level sort of crudeness. I mean, it was this, you know, around this era and Born Again. I mean, it was just a beautiful art style to look at. I mean, his rendering was beautiful. He was very spare with his line. He only hatched when he needed to. There were just as many lines as he needed to tell the story, no more, no less.
And that's the masterfulness of Mazzucchelli. Is you can tell he was a guy obsessed with figuring out the formula of how few lines and shapes can I use to have the same impact or sometimes greater.
But you know, I think his greatest tool was really his brain. I mean,
what was his greatest toot?
His greatest toot came.
Yeah, I think that's what you were originally going to say. But
I saw him at a con once, and he did have a really thunderous rip, and it blew off his colorist was his girlfriend at the time, and I saw it blew her hat off. She was wearing a hat.
I think they're married now, right?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, I believe they are. She's a painter, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she's really good. I can't. Her name is.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. Apologies. But yeah, you know me. I always have a love for the guys and gals that kind of, to your point, that they just kind of follow their own path in exploration of how to be an artist and what they're trying to do while they're a sequential storyteller. And I think Mazzucchelli is just one of the most profound in it, at least for my generation of fandom.
Richmond Lewis. It's Richmond Lewis.
Ah, yes.
Popped in my head.
Gorgeous painter. Yeah. I'm sure it helps sometimes having an artist as a spouse to bounce things off of and or collaborate.
Richmond Lewis colored that Howard Chaykin Mignola story.
Yes.
Revolution, Iron, whatever it was.
Iron Wolf.
Iron Wolf Revolution. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, well, just amazing. Yeah, a lot of beautiful painted work back in the day, right?
Yeah,
I miss that a lot.
Me too. That I usually just purchase sketches and original artwork, but I would buy a Richmond Lewis blue line to hang in my home.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the color guides too.
Absolutely.
From back in the day.
But along the lines of Mazzucchelli's, as I was saying, his brain, you look back at the Miller collaborators from the 80s, and it's a murderer's row. I mean, you've got Mazzucchelli, you've got Sienkiewicz, you've got Dave Gibbons, you've got who did the Rusty and the Boy Robot?
Darrow.
Oh yeah, Jeff Darrow, John Romita Jr.
Yeah, they're just vicious talent there, right? It's just, it's rough if you want to be part of that crew.
Simonson did the Terminator RoboCop series.
Yeah, Walter with Frank, and that actually was a lot of fun. I remember that story. I think I got all the issues. I remember being surprised by how much I enjoyed it. How he could blend those two genres. He did it perfectly, I thought. But yeah, Frank Miller just had again, he was at that stage of everything out of him was just exploding, and it was brilliant. And, for whatever reason, that never continued, but it never does with any creator, it seems. But man, again, with Mazzucchelli teaming up with him, he brought this really tangible humanism to, I think, Frank Miller books, where Frank had his own genius, but he didn't have what Mazzucchelli had as far as Commissioner Gordon being, uncertain of what to do and in this chaotic situation, and, in this fucked up town. And I just don't think Frank Miller could have hit me the way Mazzucchelli did as far as the feels go and empathy for the characters.
No, I mean, there's no question that Mazzucchelli is just happens to be a better artist than Frank, and he's probably a more conventional storyteller
for certain.
But that was
less
sort of
cinema driven too, where Frank Miller's very cinema influenced, where Mazzucchelli seems really, really pure to the sequential art form comparatively.
And it's really, I think the term you used earlier was flawless. I mean, I don't know how many times I've read, Batman Year One. I mean, it lives near my toilet, so it's got to be in the hundreds by now. Yeah,
anything by the toilet reaches the countless realm of metrics, right?
It's impossible to count. At least once a day.
And one thing I find about it, the further I get it, like I reread it about once a year or so, and I notice myself, and one of my favorite things as I progress as an artist, I notice different things in different ways and different levels of understanding throughout the years. And like, I'll be reading a book, or I'll read it one year, and especially nowadays, I'll be looking at, say, just how he did a bridge when Commissioner Gordon jumps off to save the baby or whatever.
Yeah.
And back in the day, I barely noticed the bridge. And now I'm like studying how it frames this and that. And he's using it as a storytelling element to move your eye. And so it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. And there's some interesting story choices in there. Like, again, you mentioned the affair, Jim Gordon has that affair.
He's kind of unwittingly brought into it in a moment of stress, very humanistic,
Yeah. And the they never show his they never show him resolve that with Barbara. I mean, he pulls over, after he and Barbara go to Bruce's house.
Yeah.
They ask him, where he's been. He says, well, I was on a ski trip. And then he says, they drive away, and he says, boy, he's been parked out in the driveway for 10 minutes. And that's where he says, hey, we need to talk. And he's going to break it to her that he's been having this affair. And we never hear, our only perspective on what's happening between Gordon and his wife is that Bruce notices they've been sitting in the car for 10 minutes.
Yeah. And then later they're still together, although Barbara seems a little sullen. You can tell. And again, that's just brilliant storytelling, when to reveal character moments and when to let them. You only learn of basically the results. You live with the results. You don't have to beat everybody over the head with everything. A very personal, difficult moment, and they worked it out in whatever fashion they did. Again, I think it lends to the brilliance of that story, and then also how Mazzucchelli handled it, because you really feel the character's ambivalence of needing to handle this and the stress that's coming from it, the anxiety, but also that he loves his wife and he knows he fucked up. So, again, just those two, the combo of Mazzucchelli and Frank Miller, it just never gets old to me. I love it in Born Again. I love it even more in, to me, it's absolute perfection when they did Batman Year One, though, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I mean, it is a flawless comic. The only thing that felt, on the 500th reading, I kind of feel like they could have decompressed the first issue like another 10 pages.
I get you. But do you think that was a sign of the times, though? Because this is such a new Batman story you had to let it soak a little bit up front.
Yeah. But it's, there's something about the combination of these two guys, it's like, different synergies. Like when you put Miller together with Sienkiewicz, you
get a whole nother.
It was like LSD.
Yeah, it was like Through the Looking Glass. It's like, whoa, Electro Assassin. You don't know what's real, what is. What isn't. So really neat, right?
Yeah, and then he teamed with Romita Jr. on the
Daredevil. It was basically Daredevil Year One.
Sort of a Daredevil Year One, and that was just a snooze.
It was stunning. It was a quieter story, though, right? It was good, though. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't even deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as these other books.
It's definitely, I would consider it really good, but it's more John Romita Jr. showcasing his unbelievable abilities rather than a story that sticks with me.
Right.
I don't give a floppy shit about Foggy and his problems. There's something magic when certain creators get together that they're almost better together than apart. Frank Miller does his own thing, but something about Mazzucchelli, oh man, it's just his work just, again, it's humanity. It's just the people. I would say, like, if I was doing Wild Blue Yonder, it influenced me more than, say, Frank Miller, who influenced me more as a storyteller and designer and how I apply my talent to comics. Mazzucchelli helped me humanize, say, like a character like Tug. Frank Miller didn't. Mike Mignola didn't. It was people like Mazzucchelli that helped me understand the importance of making certain characters and certain storytelling elements work better being naturalized and a little bit more elegant. And I think that contrasts the punk rock a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm obviously all I care. I absolutely love every aspect of being a punk rock artist, but I think it, just like the musical genre, I love it, but it's a very simplistic way I don't think it can always express, like, say, the same way a Jimi Hendrix or Led Zeppelin song makes me feel. Even though punk is probably my favorite musical genre, I still need, my phone. What's going on? Hey, Claire, can you turn off your internet?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what's happening. Claire's fucking up her internet.
He's sucking up all of the.
What are you doing over there, uploading gigantic files while we're in the middle of recording? So we have a studio mate now.
Not bad.
Oh, it's okay, Clara.
All done. Didn't think of that.
So, everybody yell at Clara on 3. Bye, Clara. You're fired.
Diabetes.
You're fired again, Clara. Sorry about that.
You're super fired this time.
Well, then, so to me, things started getting interesting when Frank teamed with Gibbons.
Oh, yeah, Dave, because then you got the Martha Washington, which had a whole nother flavor.
Right.
But it was closer to Frank Miller as far as the story feel than, say, a Mazzuccheli production, if that makes sense.
Then he paired with Dave Gibbons. And to me, that was sort of an interesting pairing because Dave Gibbons now at this point is now worked with the 2 biggest writers of the 80s.
Pretty much, or top 2 of the top, because you can say a lot of them, but it's hard to argue with Frank Miller and Alan Moore's not being the top 2. There's Gaiman, of course, and etc. But those 2 right then were writing the seminal books that kind of changed everything, right?
So that became sort of an interesting experiment as a reader, because there's always, the question from the beginning of time. It's the chicken and egg. It's like, where's the magic come from? Does the magic come from Alan Moore? Does the magic come from Dave Gibbons? Does the magic come from Frank Miller? Does the magic come from Mazzucchelli?
Yeah.
And it turns out that it's both.
Yeah, it seems to always be a blend, even if one kind of overpowers the other. It's somewhere in the middle, I think, is the truth for that. And yeah, I don't know. I like combos, as you well know. Singular visions are great, and I do love them. But I always love when 2 bad motherfuckers get together and play a little rock and roll, and sometimes it works better than other times. I mean, even Simon Beasley did a fun little Frank Miller story back in the day, and it was fun, but it's like the kid on like a big wheel with like guns and everything. Of course, classic, beautiful Beasley work. And it was a fun story, but I always go back to Mazzucchelli. The way it made me feel, I was involved with the success of everyone in the story. And those are always the stories that stick with me. To me, it's the difference between, say, like The Simpsons and Family Guy. Family Guy makes me laugh, but when I want to watch The Simpsons, I want Homer to win. I actually care if he wins or not. Where in Family Guy, everybody could die in a dumpster fire and I wouldn't give 2 shits. And that's the difference. I think that artists like Mazzucchelli bring. I don't know. I always fall in love with his storytelling. I care more about I don't even mind Foggy, that fucking useless Daredevil character that I just want to kick in the neck. When he is in Daredevil, when Frank or Mazzucchelli draws it, it's far less disruptive to my need to kick him in the neck. Does that make sense?
It does. And, we talked about Jeff Darrow, and it's, those Jeff Darrow collaborations, it was just Jeff Darrow drawing explosions and Frank, trying to do his best to turn it into some kind of a coherent story.
Well, I really liked Martha Washington, but to your point, it kind of seemed it's a little stiff. It's Jeff Darrow, but there's a brilliance still to this.
Martha Washington was Dave Gibbons.
Sorry, I'm all over the place.
It's all right, me too. But I'm with you. I mean, the Martha Washington stuff, I read it, but it didn't light my world on fire.
Oh, see, where I loved it, but I also like Dave Gibbons' storytelling. But then there's a downside to it. His character seems stiff and mannequin-like. And people are going to hear that and think I'm trying to take a shit on him. No, it's just how he does his stuff. And it works brilliant for some things. Other things, it's a little stiff. On Martha Washington, I thought it was pretty good just because of the tone of the story was very Frank Miller in this kind of fucked up, bizarre world where, people are fighting each other to get the chance to bomb the White House and things like that. And the meat terrorists versus the, the political wing of our army. And I thought the president really echoed nicely with the last 4 years of presidency in this country. I always thought it was a little too far-fetched until recent times. But I thought it was a good fit is what I'm trying to say. It just, I guess to our point with Mazzuccheli, he just has a subtle brilliance about his stuff, and it makes me care about his characters. And not everybody does that.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many character moments in year one. I mean, everyone is fleshed out. I mean, Selena is given, a sidekick. She's got a child she's taking care of.
First time I've ever cared about Catwoman was in Batman Year One.
Catwoman was unbelievable in that story. I mean, she's
yes,
just so well done. Even Harvey Dent, is sort of made
likable.
Suddenly I'm interested in Harvey Dent.
And again, that's the brilliance of the coordination of those two storytellers, Mazzuccheli, where Frank Miller lacked in humanism. Dave Kelly brought it to scenes that I don't think Frank is capable of as far as artistically expressing on a consistent level. So that's why I just love the harmony of two bad motherfuckers coming together, because sometimes magic happens.
Right.
And I think Batman Year One is one of those moments when magic happened, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, if Frank had handed that script to some other artist, it wouldn't have been the same product.
Of course not.
Who was around at that time? Who would have been able to
handle the character stuff with also the impactful action?
Alex Toth maybe would get
definitely Toth. Toth, I think, could have hit it. But to your point, as far as the talent that was ubiquitous at the day in the United States, it was still so heavily superhero oriented that everyone was still very dependent on American application of sequential art. And Mazzuccheli came in with a more traditional background, I think, or at least understanding of sequential art and what you can do with it. And we caught him right at the magic moment where he's able to harness all of his skills together and tell a story at its highest level versus, not even versus, before his evolution, took him into a more simplistic style. It's lightning in a bottle and it's hard to plan for, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just looking at year one, the way that it's illustrated, it's not that long after Born Again. And he's virtually, he's basically stopped cross-hatching altogether. There's no hatching in Batman Year One.
Well, not much at all. And you can see it start to happen even a little in Born Again. You can see him starting to use giant black shapes more, layering more, and be more creative and expressive rather than just dynamically detailed or overpowering in the superhero posing or that everybody was leaning towards, which has its own lane. I like his classical vision of storytelling, or how he applies storytelling you know, it just to feel so much better. If we had a more heavy style dependent artist on this book, I think it would have taken away from the characters a little bit. And you would have looked at, say, if I drew it, you'd be looking at all the cool shit I drew in the background or lines on a coat. Where Mazzuccheli, sometimes that works better for a story. Mazzuccheli shows you that sometimes it's more important to let go and let the actual story breathe and bring the excitement or a likability to the story or impressiveness of the story or connectivity of the characters rather than trying to overpower them with just style. If that,
well, yeah, I mean, the perfect example would be, you know, when for a while there, Alan Moore was writing Supreme over at Awesome Comics or whatever Leafield was running at the time, and they got Chris Sprouse.
Yeah,
you know, probably
legitimate storyteller, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a Michael Golden level, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and once in a while they'd have, you know, there'd be a fill-in or somebody else would have to do, you know, do half the story or the introduction, and it would just be one of these, you know, nitwits that were running around the Extreme Studio at the time, just running around.
Yeah, a 19-year-old kid that, whether a good person or not, they just don't have the chops yet to be a storyteller.
No, and then so suddenly you've got an Alan Moore script, and it's being drawn by, you know, pick your awesome, you know, cut your terrible image artist of that.
Yeah.
Period. And it's like, oh my God, this guy is, you know, the hand of God is writing the script, you know, and they're just handing it to these teenagers, you know, or these, you know, these pimply, you know, Coke, you know.
Yeah, they're drinking Mountain Dew and then thinking about Zelda. And
exactly. They don't even realize they're drawing an important story, you know, by a genius.
How seminal this moment could be, right?
Yeah.
In their careers and as just a legacy project for as an artist, you know.
You know, I mean, could Neil Adams have drawn Batman Year One? Yeah, probably. Oh, you know who was originally slated to draw it? Now that I think of it, was it was supposed to be I'm forgetting his name. It was it was originally offered to
classic artist.
God, he dated Lynn Varley.
Oh, that's more your lane.
Yeah, he's
you know all about who was banging who back in the day.
Now I have to look it up. Hold on a second.
I bet you're so good at that type of stuff. You could have a lineup of people's junk tool sheds from that era, and you could tell us who's who just by the herpes scarring.
Let's see. I think it was. Why can't I remember this cat's name? He was so good.
Is someone still working? The way you're talking doesn't sound like it.
Not really. He's a black guy. And he
drew rare back in the day, man.
Yeah, he drew a Batman annual. You know who it was? Trevor Von Eden.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard that name in forever.
Trevor Von Eden was originally offered Batman Year One. And I think he could have pulled it off.
I'm trying to remember the style. I remember the name.
He was an absolute unbelievable innovative talent.
Yeah.
And he did some work at Continuity, and he drew a few really influential, you know, annuals and comics that he was one of those artists, like every artist knew who he was. And he had dated Lynn Varley, so he knew Lynn, and so he was part of that group.
Okay.
But yeah, it was originally supposed to be Trevor Von Eden. And you might have remembered him from later on. He did that Batman series where Batman went on steroids. Remember that?
Yes. Wow. Long time ago.
Yeah, it was Von Eden, and I think Garcia Lopez inked it. And I think Russell Braun might have even done layouts or something.
Wow.
It was a really weird concoction.
Still interesting. God, I love just alchemy, you know?
Yeah, I mean that was I can't. Von Eden is still around. You don't see him much. He's kind of outspoken, and I think he's actually technically one of the creators of Black Lightning.
Oh yeah, cool.
I think he shows up on the TV on the show, and I think he gets an ownership credit or something.
The guy who stars in Black Lightning was the voice of the judge in the Wild Beyonder animated series.
Oh, cool! Small.
Yeah, he was really cool. He really liked the book and really liked the book. He was one of our only celebrities to post a lot about being in it.
Oh, cool. I mean, in my mind's eye, I'm just trying to picture, I'm trying to imagine, other artists who could have made year one.
Or just abstract. Imagine Sam Keith drawing it.
Oh, that'd be weird.
Yeah. So styles matter. Even though Sam Keith's one of my favorite storytellers, he wouldn't have had the character impact, I think, that Mazzuchelli brought.
No, I mean,
So it's always going to be different, but sometimes it's really different and really matters.
I'm just trying to think of artists during that period, who could have made something that special. And it's a short list.
I think so too. And a lot of them, I think Alan Davis could have done a neat job on it.
Yeah.
But that's the only one coming to mind. No American artist that I'm aware of could have had that. I don't know, the character tangibility.
Well, now that you're mentioning British artists, I'm thinking of David Lloyd all of a sudden.
Oh, cool! Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he had done V for Vendetta.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
very good storyteller, classical kind of British style, like Dave Gibbons brings. Not that they're the same, but they have a certain way that they lay out their panels and move their camera. That was very traditional that Lloyd does. Yeah. And he does it better than almost anybody, at least in that side of the pond.
So good.
Yeah.
Maybe Paul Smith might have been able to pull it off.
Would have been a little quiet, but yeah, to your point, he has that elegance of character, of construction of human beings that just lends to this type of story, I would say. So that's not completely off the table.
No, it's a short list though. I mean, it's one of those deals where you just really can't see anybody but Maz.
Once you see a masterpiece, it's almost impossible to imagine somebody else doing a masterpiece that already exists, at least in my mind.
Then he just basically dropped the mic as far as mainstream comics were concerned. I don't think he's even drawn a cover since. Actually, I think he did one more story. I think he did a Marvel
fanfare
issue.
He did a short story, I think, because I think I got it. And then, yeah, to your point, he seemingly disappeared, and then he came back out with Rubber Blankets, which was cool as hell. But radically different as far as art finishing is concerned. And he had a lot more, I guess, less dynamic storytelling or framing of panels and things of that nature. It was just a little more simplistic, but still really elegant and more design and sequential art heavy in the sense that it didn't have nutty panels and things like that, or layering that he had in some of his earlier stuff. But Rubber Blankets, if nobody's read it, it's worth reading. Really is.
Do you remember when Mazzucchelli drew? He was drawing Born Again. How he started to sort of stylize the Ben Urich character, if I'm pronouncing it right. Remember the news reporter?
Uh-huh.
He started kind of like squaring off his face and doing things with his eyes.
And that
really
just comes from cartooning, man. You know, I think I think it's he followed the trope, and what a lot of people do. Toth, don't draw what isn't needed, and some artists really pull that off beautifully.
Well, he was almost stretching things and squaring things off to the point where it was almost Sienkiewicz-esque.
I agree. Just pure style at that point and expression rather than tangibility of character.
It was an interesting little period for him there, you know, when he was drawing that series.
I agree.
You know, he was kind of stretching it almost in the opposite direction. He was getting more illustrative.
Yeah, interesting point there. I don't know. What do you like better when you are looking for a story? Do you want expressiveness or do you like tangibility in the sense or elegance of character, or do you like both and it just matters on the story?
Well, I think in the case of, you know, Batman Year One, the style became so formal that it became that has sort of becomes what makes this part of what makes the story so special. Because, you know, you've got Frank Miller who's like trying to bash his way out of the box.
Yeah.
You know, and is just out of his mind.
Yeah, he's Mike Tyson punching his way through comics, you know.
Right. And then Maz is, you know, is drawing in this really formal style with, you know, no hatching and, you know, very, very cinematic lighting and, you know, obviously gorgeous colors, you know, a lot of mood there. You can stuff that he's doing with the cape, but also keeping it realistic. Like that's a real cape. You know, it's a proportional cape. The cape isn't 30 feet long.
Isn't the Todd McFarlane Spawn cape that he would trip over.
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, you're almost watching. It's almost as if somebody walked into the Adam West Batman series in the '60s and handed them a script by Oliver Stone.
Oh, very.
You know what I mean?
Or better yet, John Milius more.
Or John Milius script, yeah.
You know, because there's your Godfather rewriter or scripter. So, that impactful character work where you want to let the character soak rather than punch everything.
Wow, you got really nice and brushy on this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out where I'm gonna put the shadow though. I want to fuck around with it. We're just gonna go Bob Ross style, okay?
Oh, I just watched the Bob Ross documentary.
Yeah. Was he a serious cocksmith laying it down?
Not really.
Just laying pipe from here to Alaska.
Well, he was married. He was married a couple times before he became the Bob Ross.
Yeah. He went to Vietnam too, I think.
Yeah, he was a vet. And then he got married young, divorced the first wife, married his second wife, and then got into business with this other husband and wife. And it sounds like there was a really kind of a
some 70s free loving.
There was some free loving there where Bob was, you know, bashing his paintbrush where he shouldn't be bashing it.
Keeping that paintbrush wet,
day
in, day out.
But it's not like she was like, you know, Farrah Fawcett. I mean, the lady who he was hooking up with was like, she was like this, you know, 65-year-old washed up, you know.
But if you think about it, you ever notice almost everyone in the 70s was ugly?
Yeah, that's true.
What the fuck was that? It's like the ugliest generation of humans.
Also at the DMV or Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
so he is banging some old lady that he was living with.
Yeah.
Was it mutual thing or was he being a jerk?
Yeah, they were getting loose.
Okay. Well, no judging.
She ended up, you know, basically kind of, they sort of stole the Bob Ross name and were making, you know, money out of bets, and they froze his son out of the money. And
those shits.
It's really kind of a sad story about, you know, because
None of his paintings are for sale. They have a museum where they just have it all just stacked up.
Yeah.
I remember watching a documentary on that. I think it was on YouTube. It's called What Did They Do with All Bob Ross's Paintings?
Right.
And I wonder if that had something to do with the old lady he was sticking.
Well, plus, I mean, his style was all kind of artifice. I mean, the style that he was teaching people to paint with existed, it's just paint by number. If this, then that. If this, then that.
It's a progression of that type of oil painting.
Right, and he was very good at it. I mean, you could feel the dimension, and he had all of the stylistic stuff down.
Yep.
In a way, when the only comp, the only comic book art world comp that I can come up with is John Byrne.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Well, it's funny. Some guy did a video where he was reviewing the John Byrne artist edition of his Fantastic Four work.
Yeah.
And if you look up close at those originals from that's when John Byrne started really inking himself primarily.
Yeah, and it got real scratchy, right?
Well, at first it was really kind of neat because there was sort of a Neil Adams kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
He was using a rapidograph, so
I was thinking by the time he went to Superman, if I remember, no, it was he did the Hulk, right?
Yeah, he did the Hulk. So
that's where
Weiss, I think, the first few issues, and then he inked a few, and then he inked the balance of them.
I just remember as a kid, I was like, "What happened?"
Yeah,
even I could tell it wasn't bad, but I remember thinking something changed. My little kid brain couldn't qualify it though.
No, there was somebody on one of the boards recently complaining about the Ordway inks on the later issues of Fantastic Four.
I was never a later fan of Ordway inks, to be honest. I thought they got too
Ordway,
good enough for government work. They just kind of. I was just kind of like, okay, well, there you go, that's done.
At that point, I think Byrne was using it was such a shorthand for him at that point.
Yeah,
it didn't bother me that Ordway was putting a sheen on it because I knew that Byrne was just kind of shorthanding it anyways.
Maybe I miss Terry Austin, maybe it was just some simplistic personal BS. But yeah, it's never the Ordway inks. They seem very void of expression, if that makes any sense. Yeah. They're very just there and showing things. I don't know. They're just saying, okay, here's the shape. Okay, here's this. I don't know. I like I guess back to punk rock. I like things that just fucking play the guitar out of tune every once in a while.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Ordway is never out of tune. I agree.
And I guess that's what and I'm not shitting on Ordway. Man, is he an amazing illustrator and comic book talent. And I've loved his work throughout the years since I can remember. So I don't want people being upset for saying that. I'm just saying later on when he's inking other people, I think it was almost, to me, it seemed kind of soulless, if that makes sense. It was mechanically sound, but there was just nothing there.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough. Actually, Craig Russell inked a few issues of Fantastic Four at that period. They were going through quite a few inkers at that period.
Yeah.
They had Ordway. They had Al Gordon.
Gordon's solid.
Yeah. They had Sinnott came in and inked an issue or two.
Everybody knows Mr. Sinnott.
Can't beat Sinnott. So there were, and then finally he just left Fantastic Four and went and did Superman.
Yeah.
And he got pretty lucky. He got fairly lucky with inkers over there because he had. I thought Kessel was a great match for him at that period of his career.
Agreed.
Austin inked a few of those.
Anytime Austin inks, right?
Yeah, they could still kind of were compatible at that time.
Well, I think Austin was getting a little old, and John Byrne was getting a little loose.
I agree. Yeah, it was
just kind of inking breakdowns like Eric Larson does now.
Yeah, more or less. So that's just kind of a long way of saying that Mazzuccheli.
Are you looking?
I'm looking at your drawing. That's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to put a little white splatter in, and I think we're calling it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I'm not even going to do white corrections on this one. I'm leaving it punk rock in spirit of Frank Miller.
It doesn't even need corrections. It's perfect. Yeah, the Maz wouldn't redraw the cover for the DVD, so Dave Johnson did it.
Oh, that's how Dave got the gig?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's how it works lots of times. I've been the replacement asshole before.
He's like, fuck it. I'm not turning down free money.
Well, Dave, I'm glad Dave did it. So
I am too.
Mazzuccheli would have been nice, right?
I mean, Dave's. It's funny. Dave is a weird choice because he's basically the anti-Mazzucchelli.
Yeah, he's very construction and design.
Yeah.
With a very discernible, consistent style application. You know, how he renders things, how he draws things. They're extremely consistent. So,
yeah. I mean, if they should have hired Trevor Von Eden if they really wanted to stay true to the history of the comic.
Yeah.
Well, there's some guys. There's a few guys now who are sort of in the Mazzucchelli school of
very
drawing.
much so. Chris Stanley kind of started out a little more Mazzucchelli, I think, if I remember correctly. Though he's his own thing now.
I've been reading his Jonah comic book to my kids.
You said it was good with the kids, right?
Kids are loving it. Yeah, we're reading number 5 tonight.
Cool. Well, I'm just going to reinforce a few lines here, and we'll see if the fans, even though we kind of went all over the place, I appreciate all the fans. When JC and I do one of these by ourselves, we're just kind of waxing poetic about stuff. So this has been kind of like the Mazzucchelli, Frank Miller, and Alchemy show, but I don't know. I like doing that stuff. It's kind of like our own version of What If, and then also discerning what makes certain things great in our minds, as opposed to just badasses making something. You know, was there a formula? Was it lightning in the bottle? Was it a mix of both? Was it the clash of egos? Was it the harmony of the two creators, or 3 or X amount of creators? I don't know. That's kind of neat to posit.
You never ended up reading that Hawkeye run by Fraction, did you?
No, just because Hawkeye, I don't want to read about a guy with a bow and arrow. Go fuck yourself. Fuck you and your arrow.
It's such a
Though
good.
I did enjoy him in the movies. He was fun.
It's the guy who drew it, David Aja, I think is his name. AJ.
Okay.
Full on Mazzucchelli riff.
Cool, man. That must have felt cool.
Oh, it was the best comic that was coming out at that time. I mean,
cool.
It was really good.
Even though it was about a guy with a bow and arrow?
I'm not picky about that kind of thing. I mean, even I'll pick up Squirrel Girl if it's well drawn.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I've seen fans dress up as Squirrel Girl.
I think there was a love. There was sort of an unrequited love thing with Squirrel Girl and Wolverine or something like that.
Oh yeah, or Wolverine loved Squirrel Girl.
No, I think Squirrel Girl had a crush on him. They're both sort of animals. You know what I mean?
I know.
She was picking up on his muscles.
But I think it'd be funnier if it was unrequited love the other way. But Squirrel Girl, I'm the best there is at what I do. No. Where's the guy with the bow and arrow?
Bring me the archer. My body is ready.
It has been prepared.
My musk is ready.
Yes. So, what's your favorite Mazzuccheli then? Obviously it's either Born Again or Year One.
His best work is Batman Year One.
Yeah, that's me too. It's just to me, it's like a perfect blend of him at the absolute height of skill and energy and connectedness to the product or application of art, and along with or employment of storytelling. How many ways can I explain this? Or along with Frank Miller, the punk rock renegade writer that was at his best at that moment.
It was, but you know, there's a lot to love about Born Again too.
Oh, just reread it not too long ago. It's the shit, right?
It really is. So that's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, for today, I'm gonna go with Year One. But
yeah, I've made a decision. I love Daredevil, but I guess I don't like the character's world as much as I like Batman's, and that's a lot of it as far as my connectedness to the IP or the actual product.
Lee Weeks maybe could have pulled off Year One.
Lee Weeks, I'm trying to think of his skill level at that time, but holy crap, at least nowadays he certainly could. I've always been a Lee Weeks fan, though. What a legit talent, man. He's still rocking and rolling and exploring as an artist. It's pretty neat.
It's nice to me to see that he's still employed.
Yes, because he's a bad motherfucker.
Oh, he's awesome, but it's like he's of a certain. He's like Romita Jr. You know, he's a little bit younger than Romita Jr. But you know, usually guys of that, you know, in that group, you know, just don't get hired anymore for whatever reason.
Well, there's ageism in comics because styles change and the palettes of the fans change, and then some new asshole gets famous for whatever reason or reasons, and then everybody just is chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
You know, and eventually, before you know it, the industry, everything about it is radically different, and it almost having a skill set becomes secondary to having fame or the current house style. You know, or style du jour.
Tess was saying that you get 5 years.
Oh yeah, I don't like putting time limits on that, but to her point, you just like with Frank Miller, the magic does not stay there forever. So choose wisely and go hard.
Right.
So because when that train comes to pick you up to take you to wherever you're going, just be ready because everybody fades away. You know, Madonna probably didn't think that she'd be an old bag of bones one day. You know, and it's going to get us all in art. Art always evolves, and you're going to become archaic. Even if you're frickin' Da Vinci, there's going to be people, this style's old, I don't like it. I want to, you know, it's just going to happen. So just move forward at doing your own art at an excellent level, and let serendipity be serendipity, because you cannot control that.
Well, I think that is an excellent sentiment to leave off on. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us and spending time with us here today. I'm not Bob Ross, but I am JC with Zach, and we thank you for coming, and we will see you again very soon with a special guest.
And sorry, our guest had an emergency today, so we just fit in a little fun one. We're going to have a part 2 of a Tony Salmon's coming. We got Tack Peter coming. We got Scott Buon, who's one of our Patreon. His image book is coming out. We got Chris Ryle. We're going to do John Byrne with him, the man who knows John Byrne better than anyone. So we got a lot of fun episodes coming up. Jason Masters. We're actually going to do a 3-hour dissertation on all the herpes scarring and shank sores JC got in the 70s.
Yes.
That's going to be a very special episode of the Blacklist Underground.
Yep.
Starring JC's 70 Shanksors and so on. So join us more. Hope you enjoyed just me and him waxing poetic about one of my absolute favorite artists ever to draw comic books, along with some fun factoids about the industry and, of course, Batman Year One, the first year of Batman.
Take it easy, everybody. See you next time.
Love you.